Hi everyone, it's Danny from Orchid Nature. So today we're going to continue talking about what is your orchid telling you, but today we'll discuss about pseudobulbs. There are many orchids that have pseudobulbs, sometimes in the forms of canes, but these devices were created and developed by the orchid for one single reason, and this is to retain water and nutrients so that the orchid can cope with drought better. Now, pseudobulbs are a very important section of the orchid because they can actually tell you a lot of things. A healthy pseudobulb needs to be green in different shades depending on the orchid, but not brown, and needs to be wrinkle-free. So let's talk about what do wrinkled pseudobulbs mean. As you may guess, a wrinkled pseudobulb means the orchid is running out of its water supplies. Now this can be due to various reasons, but mainly it means the orchid has a problem with the root system. Whether it's rotten, whether the orchid doesn't have too many roots, whether you actually forgot to water the orchid, these are the signs of a dehydrated orchid. And in my case, this is a very severely dehydrated orchid. So if your orchid goes from plump pseudobulbs to this state, you really need to check the roots to see if everything is okay, because this is a clear sign of severe dehydration. It's pretty common though that oncidiums get very fine wrinkles sometimes, especially when they're putting out flower spikes. This is your cue to try to water your orchid more, because the orchid is actually feeding new growths and flower spikes and buds and so on, and it actually needs more water than usually. So fine wrinkles like this are not a reason for worry, but just check that your orchid is properly hydrated. Sometimes fine wrinkles may appear when you repot the orchid, because an oncidium needs a bit of time to adjust to the new potting medium. Also, you're disturbing the root system, so this means the orchid needs to divert more energy into producing new roots and actually getting adjusted to the new pot and the new medium and so on. These fine wrinkles may actually disappear in a short while. If you are wondering if these wrinkles will disappear in time when the orchid is more adjusted to the environment, the answer is yes. Maybe the pseudobulb will not be brand new and shiny like in the beginning, but the wrinkles will go away for the main part, and you should have a plump pseudobulb once again when the orchid has a strong root system. The same goes with canes. A dehydrated dendrobium will have very shriveled canes, especially in the growing season when it's producing new shoots and it needs a lot of water. During the winter time, when the rest period should come, fine wrinkles are really normal, but you should try to keep your orchid as hydrated as the pseudobulbs don't go severely dehydrated and wrinkly. As all parts of the orchid, pseudobulbs can rot as well. Now in the case of Callia orchids that contain sheaths along the pseudobulbs, it's really important not to water from above and let water stand in the crown, because this can rot the pseudobulb. Curing this can be easy in some cases. Just add some hydrogen peroxide and a little bit of cinnamon on the wound, and in most cases the spreading should stop. But just be careful that you don't reach this state, because this pseudobulb will never be pretty again. It will always have this very ugly brownish stain on it. Pseudobulbs can have various colors depending on the orchid variety. In this case, I have a very dark green pseudobulb. This doesn't mean this orchid is sick, it just means this is how it's supposed to look like. But just be careful that your pseudobulb doesn't get all brown and mushy. This means it's rotting, either from the base, either from the top. Sometimes, if an orchid is dehydrated and the pseudobulbs are very wrinkly, and then you suddenly hydrate it, the pseudobulbs can crack open, so you get all these ugly stripes, brownish stripes. This doesn't necessarily mean your orchid is sick, but it's very unsightly, so just be careful that you don't dehydrate your orchid. When you see that your orchid is starting to produce very fine wrinkles, check to see if the medium needs watering, if the orchid actually needs watering. And water your orchid if you see very fine wrinkles in the pseudobulbs. Now, unfortunately, these stripes can also indicate an orchid virus, and there is no way to know actually if you're dealing with a virused orchid or a healthy orchid unless you test the orchid. Now, I have a video on orchid viruses. If you didn't see that, you have a link in the description. In that video, I explain to you what viruses are and why you need to avoid them, and also how to test your orchids for viruses. Sometimes pseudobulbs can get this reddish tinge to them, especially in the case of Callia orchids. This actually means your orchid is receiving quite enough light, and you shouldn't actually up the light anymore. This pigmentation is the orchid's way of coping with sunlight, just like you would get a tan. Keep in mind that from this you're one step away from burned leaves, so try not to go any higher with light if your orchid is displaying reddish colors on the pseudobulbs and on the leaves. Sometimes orchids might produce smaller pseudobulbs than in the previous years. I've noticed this happens when an orchid is just recovering from an illness. It's not a reason for worry if your orchid has been sick, and the next pseudobulbs it will produce will gradually become bigger in size. These pseudobulbs, however, will never get big like the older pseudobulbs. It doesn't mean they don't function normally, and they can even bloom. If you're dealing with a deciduous type of dendrobium, the old canes will lose their leaves and will start to look grayish like this. Now this doesn't mean they're dead, so never cut them away, because they actually help the new growth. They just serve as deposits of water and nutrients. So if your deciduous dendrobium looks something like this is actually very normal and you shouldn't worry. Some orchids do have naturally wrinkled pseudobulbs, like in the case of Cherry Baby. I've never seen a Cherry Baby with a very plump pseudobulb. This is how they actually look like. So some orchids do look like this, so it's best to know what type of orchid you have before starting to worry about it. Like any other part of the orchid, pseudobulbs can be affected by bacterial infections or fungal infections or even sunburns. So try to treat the pseudobulb just like you would treat a leaf. Try to protect it from excessive water and excessive sunlight, and you should be just fine. Okay, so these are the basic things you need to know about orchid pseudobulbs. If you have other questions or I forgot to mention something, just leave me a comment or a question in the comment section and I'll try to get back to you, and I hope you enjoyed this. So if you want to see more videos from me, don't forget to subscribe, and also visit orchidnature.com for more information on orchids, and also talk with our community and share your orchid stories. I'll see you next time. Bye!